Hey everyone, welcome back to another Genshin Impact video. Today, I'm looking at Hu Tao because I can. I know she's about to go away, I think in like a day or two, but I still wanted to get this video out because there might be some people who want to know the mathematics behind her. I don't think so really because these videos typically don't get as many views, but if you're interested, this video now exists. There's nothing else to say, so let's just dive into the assumptions and notes. So the assumptions are pretty much the same as my other DPS videos, but let's go through them for all the new folk, if there are any new folk. So Assumption 1, all characters are at level 70, Ascension 4, Constellation 0. Assumption 2, weapons considered are at level 70, Ascension 4, Refinement 1. And Assumption 3, all talents are at level 6. The reasoning behind all these assumptions is just that this is like the easiest point that any player can realistically get to without too much investment. Level 90 and talent level 10s are pretty expensive and require you to be playing the game actively, and not everyone has that. Now for my notes, I'm going to be using my 4 formations again, the cluster, lone, boss, and flank formations. Though this is pretty much unnecessary for Hu Tao, and you'll see why later. Also, some quick disclaimers. The numbers are taken from Honey Impact and the wiki. So yeah, that's all for now. Let's get right into the math. Hu Tao is the newest character to be released, and she's got some cool stuff going for her. She's a Pyro Polearm DPS unit, and that makes her quite strong already. The Pyro part anyways. Now, with these solo DPS videos, we're going to have to look at her attacks first, so let's start with her normal attacks. Hu Tao's normal attack, Secret Spear of Wangsheng, hits us a total of 7 times over 3.5 seconds. As seen here, Hu Tao's normal attack will deal a total of 517.36% damage. That's it. There's no special gimmicks associated with this talent. Moving on to our charged attacks. Hu Tao's charged attack, also under Secret Spear of Wangsheng, causes her to dash forward and deal damage to all enemies hit. It takes approximately 0.9 seconds to perform and deals 186.95% damage. It deals slightly more damage per second than Hu Tao's normal attack rotation, but it also costs us 25 stamina per use. However, when Hu Tao uses her charged attack while in her skill form, she deals extra damage in the form of Blood Blossoms. But those are under her skill talent, so let's check that out. Hu Tao's skill, Guide to Afterlife, increases Hu Tao's attack, infuses her weapon with Pyro, and causes her charged attacks to deal additional Blood Blossom damage. As seen here, at level 6, Hu Tao will gain an additional attack equal to 5.06% of her max HP. With a base HP of 11,899, this is a minimum extra 602 attack. Do note, however, that this attack bonus cannot exceed 400% of Hu Tao's base attack, which is a measly 81 at level 70. Of course, you can factor in weapons to this value, but don't expect to just slam as much HP as possible on her without leveling up your weapon. Next, you can see here that the Blood Blossom damage seems pretty low at 89.6% damage. That's because this damage actually ticks once every 4 seconds, and it lasts 8 seconds. This means that each enemy affected will take a minimum of 179.2% extra damage per charged attack. Kind of, because it doesn't stack. Now, given that the skill lasts for 9 seconds, Hu Tao can apply Blood Blossom twice per skill use, adding up to a total of 358.4% damage from the skill to each enemy. The only issue with this skill damage is that it is tied to the charge attack, lasts for only 9 seconds with a cooldown of 16 seconds, and it doesn't stack. So if you hit an enemy and apply Blood Blossom, if you hit them again with a charge attack, you're just going to extend the time instead of cause them to take an additional 86 or 89.6% damage. The skill also does not generate any elemental particles, so charging Hu Tao's burst is going to require either a battery or a lot of enemies to kill. But moving on to her burst. Hu Tao's burst, Spirit Soother, deals large AoE damage and also heals Hu Tao a percentage of her max HP. The neat thing about this burst is that it deals more damage and heals more if Hu Tao has lower than 50% of her max HP left. As seen here, Hu Tao will deal 399.52% damage and heal 8.25% of her max HP per enemy hit with a limit of 5 enemies. Or she will deal 499.4% damage and heal 11% of her max HP if she's below 50% max HP. The burst has a cooldown of 15 seconds and requires 60 energy to use, so it is decently expensive, but not impossible. Finally, let's take a look at Hu Tao's passive talents. Hu Tao's passive talents are kind of underwhelming, to be honest. Her passive one, Flutterby, increases all party members' crit rate by 12% for 8 seconds. Except for Hu Tao herself. This makes it so to get the most out of Hu Tao, you actively don't want her to be on the field once her skill ends. Now, that isn't to say this is a bad passive at all. In fact, it's actually pretty good. But it forces you to build very specifically for a swap team or at least a dual DPS team. Otherwise, you're not getting that much out of it. Her passive 2, Sanguine Rouge, increases her pyro damage bonus by 33% if she has less than or equal to 50% of her max HP. However, with the sheer amount of HP that she builds, you can't actually expect her to take 20% of her HP as damage within 9 seconds in order to proc this passive. What this effectively means is that you actually don't want Hu Tao to go over 80% of her max HP at any given time. This way, activation of her skill would allow for maximum damage boost. This also means that you ideally only have 30% or less HP when you use Hu Tao's burst, otherwise you might heal past 80%, and the next skill use won't be enough to gain this passive's bonus. Unless there are less than 5 enemies present, then with each enemy, you can have more minimum HP. Effectively, these passives are all decent, but the amount of restrictions on them make it hard to really fully utilize. Not to say that you can't play around them, but I personally would not like having to play around them. Now, there is one passive that's not plainly stated, and it's that Hu Tao's dash allows her to go through enemies. It's a very interesting ability that no one else has yet. It's not necessarily character defining, but it's something that's worth mentioning, especially with how much she moves around using her skill. Now, let's take a look at Hu Tao's stats. At level 70, Hu Tao rocks an impressive 11,899 HP and a hilariously low 81 base attack. This value alone is the reason why you cannot use Hu Tao as a DPS without her skill. You will do almost no damage without her skill up, even with the best weapons in the game. However, Hu Tao also gains crit damage on her Ascension stat, which comes out at a total of 69.2% crit damage at level 70. Ultimately, what this means is that when Hu Tao has her skill up, she has a total attack of 753, assuming she has a weapon that gives at least 70 base attack, which isn't hard. However, for the purposes of my math, I will be using 683 attack because I always assume no weapon for the base DPS calculations. I will include things about weapons later, but for the basic math, I will be using 683. Now, let's take these stats and build Hu Tao's damage formula. Since Hu Tao's skill only lasts for 9 seconds, and the optimal play would be to use her for only those 9 seconds, we're going to start with 9 times 60 to get 540 total frames. Next, we subtract the frames taken by the dodge timing I use of 23 frames per 300 frames, rounded up, for 46 frames subtracted. The dodge timing is effectively just every 5 seconds you have to dodge once, and one dodge takes 23 frames, and I typically round it up. Now we just subtract the frames used by the skill, which is 36 frames, as well as the frames used by the burst at 138 frames, to get 320 frames left for charge attacks effectively. One charge attack takes 54 frames, so we divide our 320 frames by 54 to get 5.93 total charge attacks, which we can easily round up to 6 charge attacks total. Now before we continue on, I do want to say that I am assuming that Hu Tao is below 50% HP for these calculations. If she's above 50% HP, she does much less damage because she does lose out on the extra damage from her burst, as well as from her passive too. So plugging in all these values, 6 charge attacks at 186.95% damage grants us 10,541.96 damage per enemy in the charge attack. 1 skill at a total 358.4% damage grants us 3,368.32 damage per enemy in the skill AoE, and 1 burst at 499.4% damage grants us 4,963.46 damage per enemy in the burst AoE. Total up, we just get the 10,541.96 times C, plus 3,368.32 times S, plus 4,693.46 times B, each letter representing the number of enemies caught in the respective skill AoE, or burst AoE, or charge attack AoE. Now we can plug our formula into our formations. If you don't know what the formations are, you're going to have to watch probably my bow DPS video, but they're just how the enemies are grouped together. Against the cluster formation, I assume that Hu Tao can hit a maximum of 3 enemies with her charge attack at any point in time. However, by simply repositioning, Hu Tao will be able to hit all enemies at some point with her charge attack, so I also assume that her Blood Blossoms will hit every enemy for the maximum value. This is an overestimation because it's not entirely 100% guaranteed that you will hit every enemy twice within that 9-second span in order to maximize your Blood Blossom damage. But it's also not impossible, so I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt and assume if you play her enough, you can easily do this. At least I think so. Thus, with 6 charge attacks, 1 skill, and 1 burst, Hu Tao will deal a total of 71,944.2 damage, or a DPS of 7,993.8. Now, if you actually did the math here, if you actually look through my math, you'll notice the numbers are actually slightly off, and that's actually due to a rounding error. So don't worry about it too much. If you want the hard numbers with all the decimal points, I will have the Google Sheets in the link in the description. Against the lone and boss formations, though, Hu Tao will only be able to hit the one enemy there, so she will deal a total of 18,606.18 damage and a DPS of 2,067.35. Keep in mind, against only one enemy, Hu Tao cannot heal past 60% of her total HP, because with one enemy, she will only heal at most 11% of her max HP. Finally, against the flank formation, Hu Tao's charge attacks will hit one of them at a time. But this does again mean her Blood Blossoms can hit both still. Technically, I am giving her a lot of leeway here, but it's not impossible, so yeah. Under the flank formation, Hu Tao will deal 24,791.3 damage and a DPS of 2,754.6. And that's pretty much it for the math of Hu Tao. To be honest, she's a mid-tier DPS, at least in terms of 5 stars. If we compare her to Ganyu, the current best DPS, we see that Hu Tao is actually lacking. At weaponless values, Ganyu deals 877.53 lone DPS and 7,723.62 cluster DPS, compared to Hu Tao's 2,067.35 lone DPS and 7,993.8 cluster DPS. Now, you might be saying, wait, Zoob, that's not lacking. Hu Tao is actually stronger. That's actually not true. See, the problem here is that Hu Tao is actually rocking about 683 attack right now, as I said earlier, only because of her skill, and her skill scales with HP. What this also means is that Hu Tao does not actually scale that much better with a better weapon. So let me give you an example. Let's take a 4-star craftable weapon for both Hu Tao and Ganyu. Let's say Crescent Pike for Hu Tao and Prototype Crescent for Ganyu. With these weapons, Hu Tao deals 3,120.57 lone DPS and 12,066.24 cluster DPS. However, Ganyu deals 3,755.04 lone DPS and 33,049.96 cluster DPS. So, once weapons are factored in, Hu Tao kind of falls behind. And I say kind of because Hu Tao actually still scales pretty much near identically to other DPS units, like Ganyu, if they're using 4-star weapons. If we factor in artifacts, for every HP percent that Hu Tao gets, she gains approximately 6 extra attack. For every attack percent that Ganyu gets, she gains approximately 6.4 extra attack. This difference is incredibly small. Now, it's still statistically significant, so we can't ignore this difference, but it's still pretty small. You're not going to see much different until you hit about 100% extra attack, and in that case, yeah, Ganyu will now rock 40 extra attack over Hu Tao, but 40 extra attack isn't all that much unless your skill or talent multipliers are really high, which Ganyu's is kind of, but it's not enough that it's like, this is game-breaking. Now, if Ganyu is actually using like a 5-star weapon like Ammo's Bow or Skyward Harp, she will very quickly begin to outdamage Hu Tao with over 7 extra attack per attack percent. In other words, other DPS units like Ganyu or Diluc or Klee are capable of scaling with both weapons and artifacts, while Hu Tao only realistically scales with artifacts. However, this isn't the biggest problem, because the biggest problem is that Hu Tao can only be used for 9 seconds. After that, she becomes functionally useless because her normal attacks, without that 600 plus bonus attack, will deal about 124 damage per second. That's almost nothing. And no amount of artifacts are going to be able to fix that issue because of her already incredibly low base attack. If you got like 100% attack percent on Hu Tao, you're not going to get that much, because 81 base attack is just not enough. And I think that covers all of the math in its entirety for Hu Tao. So the question then becomes, should you roll for Hu Tao? Well, first, if you like her, you probably already rolled for her. But if you're looking to min-max, I would say she's actually fun to roll for, so you don't need to worry about, buyer's regret or anything. She's actually far stronger than Xiao, even with the 5-star weapons included, because Xiao is a Nemo, and Hu Tao is Pyro, so if you pair her with Xingqiu, you can almost double her output. Not really, because Vaporize is only a 1.5 times multiplier, but you can multiply your damage with Hu Tao and Xingqiu, whereas Xiao can't. So she is much stronger than Xiao, actually, if you factor in the support team you can build around her. Now, she's not the strongest, that's still clearly Ganyu, but she's not bad. You can still run her. However, she is expensive, because you can only use her for 9 seconds. So you're going to need either a very strong support team that can just drop their skills in bursts whenever Hu Tao needs to be out, or you can run something like Tartaglia and have him run while Hu Tao needs to recharge her skill, and then swap them. So that actually works pretty well, but now you have to gear 2 DPS units, and that can get very expensive very quickly. Now, I don't also know how she stacks up against Diluc or Klee, because my mathematics for Diluc and Klee are very, very different from how I calculate now. I don't think she's as strong, simply because she has that 9-second timer. But if we're just comparing, like, peak efficiency, she's probably on par. I can't necessarily say she's better or worse definitively. I don't have the math to back that up, but from what I understand, I think she's at least on par. But that's about it for my conclusion. If you don't care about the support or weapons, that's it, because I'm going to move on to weapons now. If you're a whale, you're going to want Staff of Homa. But if you're going to use this weapon, you're also going to want to work on the strat and how you play Hu Tao, because you always want to have less than 50% HP, or you're not going to get the Staff of Homa's inherent HP to attack bonus. You can also use Primordial Jade Wing Spear. It deals damage on par with Staff of Homa until you start stacking HP, then it starts to lag behind quite significantly. The values are 4,713.72 lone DPS for Staff of Homa, and 4,722.36 lone DPS for Primordial Jade Wing Spear. Again, until you start stacking HP. I did do the math with this. Staff of Homa scales harder. For you non-whales, I suggest Black Tassel, actually. It's a 3-star weapon. I'm pretty sure everyone has about 80 of them. It grants 38.7% HP at level 70 and has 274 base attack, which is enough to cover a reasonable amount of HP to attack conversion. If you have like 80+% HP extra on top of Black Tassel, I don't think it works anymore, and you're gonna have to level up Black Tassel to like level 90 just to get the base attack. But if you're just running at level 70, it's enough. Now, if you're using this weapon, it gives you 3,356.66 lone DPS and 12,979.13 cluster DPS. No, this is still not enough to beat Ganyu's damage, because Ganyu just gets so much more damage. But Ganyu will require a 4-star weapon instead of a 3-star. That's all for weapons. Now onto team comps. Unlike my Xiao video, this is what I think is the best comp regardless of your status being a whale or non-whale. And that team is Xingqiu, Diona, and Xiangling. This would be my preferred team, even if you had access to all characters in all constellations, because you can use Xiangling as your secondary DPS, Diona as a shielder and a healer, and Xingqiu for his burst DPS, and also because he's Hydro. You could swap out Diona for Albedo if you needed more damage, but otherwise I'd keep her in the team just to be safe. You never know how much damage you're going to accidentally take. This team also covers enough elements to be able to stomp most content, even in the Abyss. And overall, this team does everything you need for Hu Tao, because they're all very strong on their own. Like, you can even build Xingqiu for damage, because he just does that much damage, and his burst does last for 15 seconds. So you can use his burst, use Hu Tao, and deal a bunch of your damage. Swap to Xiangling as soon as the burst or skill runs out on Hu Tao. And Xiangling is also a very decent DPS unit. And if you're running something like, I don't know, Crescent Pike on Xiangling, she will do quite a bit of damage, and Diona's just for staying safe. Finally, we have artifacts for Hu Tao specifically. There's not much option here, to be perfectly honest. You're just going to want to run 4-piece Lava Walker, because once you activate Hu Tao's skill, of course, you do get the infused pyro attacks. And so you just gain that 35% damage for Hu Tao every time you attack. And that's pretty much it for Hu Tao. I hope you guys enjoyed this relatively short video. To be honest though, I am getting kind of tired. Genshin is a very slow updating game. We just went through the Liyue Festival, and now we have the Mondstadt Festival coming up in a couple of days. The problem is that nothing really new has actually been introduced, and I'm honestly running out of content to do math on. As such, my schedule might shift from a varied once every 2 weeks to literally just whenever there's something to actually talk about and analyze. As usual though, if you guys do want me to calculate something, just leave it in the comments below. I do see every comment still. I don't always reply to every comment, but I do see all of them, because there's only like 20-some comments every week, maybe. But if you guys have any ideas, drop them down there. I'll see it, and I'll try. I don't know how long it'll take. Some ideas take longer than others, but I'll look into it. Also, schoolwork is starting to mount up. I am still in university, so I'm going to have a lot less time than usual, which is going to affect video production anyways. That's enough rambling. Hope you guys learned something or otherwise enjoyed this video. If you did, why not consider subscribing? It's free, and I get to watch my small number become big number. Also, the number of people who watch my videos but aren't subscribed has increased to 93.5% from the 91.4% from my last video. What gives you guys? Anyways, that's enough shilling for today. Thanks for watching.